Def Leppard is that you can always do something new, and without going totally out of bounds, the fans seem to accept it.
Known for his wild guitar solos and deep emotions, Steve Clark was the heart of Def Leppard's powerful sound. But behind the fame, he struggled with pain, addiction, and inner battles. How could someone so talented fall so hard? Why couldn't anyone save him? Join us as we uncover the haunting truth behind the tragedy of Steve Clark. Stephen Maynard Clark was born in a modest home in Wisewood, Sheffield. His father, Barry Clark, drove a taxi, and his mother, Beryl, managed the household. At a young age, Steve exhibited a passion for music. At the age of 6, he attended his first concert, where he saw Cliff Richard and the Shadows perform live. This experience ignited a love for music in his heart. When Steve was 11 years old, his father gave him his first guitar. However, his father's condition was that he had to learn how to play it well. Steve followed through and studied classical guitar for a year to become familiar with the instrument. One day, his perspective changed when he listened to Led Zeppelin's debut album at a friend's place. This moment was a turning point for Steve as he was inspired by Jimmy Page's guitar playing and realized that rock music was his true calling. Since then, his dream has been to make music in the rock genre. After Steve graduated from school, he got a job at an engineering company called GEC Traction. He was working as a lathe operator and only had 1 year left in his 4-year apprenticeship when something big happened in his life. Before this happened, Steve was part of a local band called Electric Chicken, where they mostly played cover songs in and around Sheffield. At the same time, he crossed paths with Pete Willis, the founder of a new band called Def Leppard. They met at a technical college when Willis noticed Steve reading a book about guitars. Intrigued, Willis asked Steve if he played guitar and invited him to try out for his band. Originally, Steve was a no-show and missed his first opportunity. However, fate had other plans for him. Later, at a Judas Priest concert, Steve crossed paths with Pete Willis and Joe Elliott, the lead singer of Def Leppard. Willis extended the invitation once again, and this time, Steve agreed. In January 1978, Steve finally entered their rehearsal space with his guitar in hand. The moment he started playing, it was evident that he belonged with them. Joe Elliott recalled how Steve impressed everyone by playing Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd all the way through. This was a moment that nobody in the room could forget. At that instant, it was clear to everyone present that they had stumbled upon something extraordinary. Steve had a distinctive appearance and fashion sense. His long blonde hair, denim jacket, and white clogs made him noticeable. However, it was his guitar playing that made him different. His guitar produced a raw, slightly rough sound that complemented Pete Willis's sharper, funkier style. Working together, they formed a strong duo. Steve was never shy about sharing his thoughts from the start. Shortly after becoming a member of the band, he made it clear that he would only stay if they started performing live instead of just rehearsing. The rest of the band agreed, and they soon began playing live shows. Not only was Steve a talented guitarist, but he also had a knack for songwriting. He contributed to writing the majority of the band's music over the years. His ability to create memorable and emotional guitar riffs earned him the nickname the Riff Master. In 1979, Def Leppard got their first major opportunity by signing a record deal with Phonogram Records. This led to Steve quitting his job at GEC Traction to pursue music as a career. Their first album, On Through the Night, was well received in the UK and US, reaching number 51 on the Billboard charts. Shortly after, they started opening for popular rock bands such as AC/DC and Ted Nugent. Def Leppard was often linked to the new wave of British heavy metal, but they did not embrace that label. They saw themselves as distinct from bands like Iron Maiden and Saxon. Rather than sticking to traditional heavy metal styles, Def Leppard drew inspiration from glam rock groups such as T-Rex and Queen. Their goal was to create music that was daring, full of feeling, and enjoyable. In 1981, the band put out their second album, High and Dry, which elevated their music to a new level. Steve was instrumental in creating this album, with his impressive guitar skills and unique riffs adding a special touch that fans adored. He remained a key figure in the band, consistently bringing fresh ideas and melodies to keep their music current. Steve Clark was more than just a member of the band. He played a crucial role in making them successful. His passion for music, strong guitar playing, and determination to always push forward played a significant part in Def Leppard's rise to fame. From the beginning, he showed he was not content to just go with the flow. He wanted to make an impact. Clark's journey, however, was not without serious challenges. Was he able to survive all of these? Clark's life was not perfect despite his success on stage. His relationship with his taxi driver father, who held traditional values, was challenging. His father did not understand the music world Clark lived in, causing him to constantly feel the need to prove himself. Clark desired his father's approval while staying true to himself, creating inner turmoil. He struggled to juggle his father's expectations with his rock music career, leading to increased stress. To cope with this pressure, Clark turned to alcohol as a way to unwind, but it eventually spiraled into a difficult habit to break. As Def Leppard grew more popular, problems within the band became apparent. One member, Clark, started drinking heavily, affecting the whole group. By the early 1980s, his alcohol misuse had worsened significantly. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one struggling. Another member, Pete Willis, also had issues with alcohol, causing their friendship to deteriorate. They used to be close bandmates, but began arguing more frequently. Even minor things, like Pete using up all the towels, led to major conflicts. What was once a joke or nuisance became a serious issue. The tension ultimately led to a difficult decision in 1982, when Pete Willis was let go from the band due to his drinking problem. After Willis departed, the band enlisted a new guitarist named Phil Collen. Initially, Clark was unsure about Collen. He admired Collen's talent, particularly his speed and jazz-influenced techniques. While Clark played more based on instinct and emotion, Collen had trained himself in a precise, quick, and technical style. This initially made Clark feel uneasy. However, instead of letting jealousy or fear get in the way, something unexpected happened. The two quickly bonded, working well together musically and becoming close friends. They spent so much time together that they were eventually known as the Terror Twins. Their friendship extended beyond music as they partied, played pranks, and had deep conversations late into the night. Whether performing on stage or just hanging out, they were always seen together. Their bond made them a formidable team, both personally and musically, creating a unique sound by alternating between lead and rhythm guitar. Despite having different styles, they complemented each other perfectly, elevating Def Leppard's music to new heights. The combination of Clark's passionate playing and Collen's technical expertise became a standout aspect of the band. In 1983, Def Leppard released their first album they worked on together, called Pyromania. This album was a huge success for the band, with hit songs like Photograph, Foolin', and Rock of Ages. It catapulted them to fame globally and was considered the peak of their success by fans. However, behind the scenes, guitarist Clark was struggling with personal issues, particularly with alcohol. Despite the band's growing success, Clark found himself sinking further into trouble. Though he appeared to be a rock star to the outside world, he was still battling inner demons that couldn't be fixed. Even though Clark had achieved a lot of success, he still struggled internally. He had put in a lot of effort for the band, contributed to their music, and wrote some of their most popular songs. However, the pressure to prove himself and the emotional baggage from his personal life made things more difficult as time went on. Throughout it all, his guitar remained his voice, expressing his emotions loudly, clearly, and memorably. Following the tremendous success of Pyromania, Def Leppard started working on their next album, filled with enthusiasm and optimism for the future. However, things took a tragic turn when Rick Allen, the band's drummer, was involved in a severe car accident. This incident changed everything for the group. Allen lost his left arm, and the news devastated everyone in the band. It was a sorrowful moment for Allen and his bandmates. As a result, their planned album was postponed. The atmosphere shifted from excitement to sadness and uncertainty. The band faced an unclear future. Nevertheless, Alan was determined to persevere. Despite his injury, he aimed to play drums again and trained to use a special electronic drum kit. He put in tremendous effort, overcame the challenges, and surprised everyone with his return. His resilience inspired the band, though not everyone felt the same way. Steve Clark, the lead guitarist, was dealing with his struggles. Unlike Alan, whose injury was visible, Clark was suffering internally. He felt increasingly isolated from those around him. Despite the band's closeness, he felt alone. He had battled alcohol issues for years, and his situation was worsening. Alan attempted to reach out, wanting to help, but discussions about Clark's drinking often went nowhere. Clark would deflect, bringing up Alan's past substance issues. It became evident that they were unable to connect. Both were in pain, but in different ways. Alan later admitted he did not realize how serious Clark's struggles were until it was too late. He was focused on his recovery and wasn't in a position to support anyone else. The distance between them widened. What could have been a healing moment for two friends turned into another missed opportunity. Amidst everything happening, the band released their new album, Hysteria, in 1987, which became their biggest success. The songs dominated the charts, and the band's popularity soared, making Def Leppard a household name worldwide. However, this success did not resolve all issues. That same year, Phil Collen chose to quit drinking. He had been the closest friend of Clark and the band, and they were famously known as the Terror Twins, always together and always up to something. With Collen now sober, their unique friendship began to shift. Clark felt this change profoundly. Without Collen as his drinking companion, he experienced a deep sense of loneliness. The one person who truly understood him had moved on, leaving Clark struggling to cope with this loss. The friendship that once brought him joy and strength now felt like another thing slipping away, leading him into a downward spiral. His drinking escalated, and his behavior became increasingly erratic. He would alternate between anger and withdrawal. Rick Savage, the bassist, noticed the significant transformation in Clark. He observed that Clark no longer looked forward to performing, which was unusual, since Clark had always loved being on stage. Previously, he was the most eager to leave the studio for live shows, but now he seemed to dread it. Things deteriorated to the point where Clark attempted to harm himself. During rehearsals in Glens Falls, New York, just before a major US tour, he smashed his hand in a hotel bathroom, trying to injure himself to avoid going on tour. This desperate act was a silent cry for help, indicating he could no longer continue. It was evident that Clark was suffering deeply, caught between the life of a famous rock star and the overwhelming feelings he couldn't escape. He felt out of place, even within the band he had helped create. Despite everything he was going through, Clark continued to play music. He had signed a deal with Gibson Guitars in 1987 and stayed loyal to the brand. Sometimes in the studio, he would use Fender guitars for a different sound, but even his guitar playing began to suffer. The clear, powerful playing that once made Def Leppard's sound so strong was fading. Clark was losing control, not just of his music, but of his life. All these, however, led to the end of his career and tragically, the end of his life. In December 1989, Steve Clark, the talented guitarist of Def Leppard, was found unconscious in a gutter. His condition shocked everyone. His blood alcohol level was 0.59. This was extremely high and dangerous. To understand how serious it was, doctors explained that John Bonham, the drummer of Led Zeppelin, had died with a level of 0.41. Steve's condition was far worse. The band was terrified. They realized how close they were to losing him. It wasn't just heavy drinking anymore, it was life-threatening. Clark was quickly admitted to a psychiatric hospital in Minnesota. The doctors wanted to help him recover, but they also needed help from his bandmates. The doctors asked each of them to write personal letters to Steve. These letters were meant to show how much they cared and to make him feel supported. The letters were heartfelt, full of concern and love, but they did not work the way everyone had hoped. Joe Elliott, the band's lead singer, later admitted that he already felt they had lost Steve by then. It was a sad and painful moment. Their producer, Mutt Lange, also noticed something that made him worry. He said Steve's skin had changed. It looked dull and unhealthy, like orange peel. From far away, Steve still looked like a rock star. He wore his usual cowboy boots, jeans, and kept his long hair perfect. But up close, he did not look well. His skin was pale, and his eyes looked tired. He looked like someone who was slowly fading, even though he was still trying to hold on. After his stay in the hospital, the band decided to give Steve a break. They hoped time off would help him get better. He was given 6 months to focus only on his recovery. Everyone wanted him to come back stronger. Steve entered a rehab center in Tucson, Arizona. While there, he met Janie Dean. She was also in recovery. She had struggled with heroin addiction. They connected quickly. Both wanted to turn their lives around. They made promises to stay sober and even got engaged. At first, things seemed hopeful, but soon after leaving rehab, they both relapsed. Before Janie Dean, Steve had been in a long relationship with Lorelei Schellist, an American model. They were together for 7 years and had also been engaged, but their relationship had suffered greatly because of Steve's drinking. In her autobiography, Lorelei later revealed how deeply alcohol had affected their time together. It wasn't just a bad habit. Steve's drinking was a powerful force that damaged his love life, his friendships, his work, and his body. In 1989, Phil Collen and the rest of the band knew something had to change. They decided to step in. They staged an intervention, urging Steve to go to rehab. Steve agreed to get help, but once again, he did not stay long. He left the program before finishing it and went back to his dangerous habits. The band was frustrated, but they still wanted to support him. They did not want to give up on him. Not long before his death, Steve passed out in a bar in Minneapolis. He had to be rushed to the Hazelden Addiction Treatment Center. The situation was serious. The band flew in right away. They did not want to lose him. Doctors told Steve again that his life was at risk. His alcohol level was dangerously high. They told him he had to get clean. Steve agreed to enter another rehab center, again in Arizona. The band told him his place in Def Leppard would still be there when he recovered. They truly believed he could come back and play again. During this time, Joe Elliott hoped the time off would help Steve enjoy normal life. He imagined Steve spending time at home, cooking meals, and getting some peace. But that did not happen. Steve went back to drinking. He spent most of his time at a nearby pub. He wasn't resting or getting better. One day, while drunk, he fell down a flight of stairs. He cracked a rib. Doctors gave him pain medication. They warned him not to drink while taking it, but he did not listen. The mix of alcohol and medicine only made things worse. His health kept getting weaker. His mind became more confused. The people around him saw the signs, but there was little they could do. Steve was trapped in a cycle he couldn't break. He wanted to stop, but he couldn't. His body was damaged. His spirit was tired. His friends and bandmates did everything they could, but Steve was slipping away. On January 8th, 1991, Janie Dean, Clark's fiancée, discovered him unresponsive on their couch at the age of 30. An autopsy indicated that he passed away from respiratory failure caused by a dangerous mix of alcohol and prescription medications, including codeine and Valium, with morphine also present in his system. His blood alcohol concentration was recorded at 0.30. The previous night, Steve had gone out to a pub with his friend Daniel Van Alphen and returned home around midnight to watch a video. By morning, he was gone. At the time of his death, Clark was still on a leave of absence from the band. Although they had plans for his return once he recovered, he never came back. His passing left the band members in shock and sorrow. Joe Elliott later expressed that losing Steve felt akin to losing an elderly family member. It was something you knew could happen, but you never anticipated it would occur that day. Following Clark's death, Def Leppard continued to work on their album Adrenalize, which had already experienced delays. They now had to complete it without one of their founding guitarists. Phil Collen took on the challenge of recreating the band's iconic two-guitar sound. With the help of early demo recordings and memories of playing with Steve, Phil managed to replicate his parts, though it was a haunting experience. Listening to Steve's old recordings felt like jamming with a ghost. The album was ultimately finished as a 4-member band, and Vivian Campbell was brought in to replace Clark. Campbell has remained with Def Leppard and is still part of the group today. Despite moving forward, the void left by Clark was profoundly felt. After Steve's passing, media reports emerged suggesting he had been in a financial dispute with his father. These stories began circulating around the time of his funeral. Janie Dean, who had been by his side in his final months, also passed away a few years later due to substance misuse, reflecting a tragic parallel to his struggles. Clark was laid to rest at Wisewood Cemetery in Loxley, Sheffield, near his family's home. His remarkable talent as a guitarist continued to resonate with his bandmates and fans. Phil Collen recalled how producer Mutt Lange once characterized Clark as not just a musician, but a thinker. Lange often referred to many session musicians as sausages, competent but lacking creativity. In contrast, Steve was brimming with imagination. He was more than just a guitarist. He constantly sought deeper meaning in his music. Clark was a work in progress, and tragically, he never had the opportunity to finish his journey. Those who knew him felt he had so much more to express, both in his music and in life. If he had managed to conquer his addiction, the world might have witnessed a new phase of his extraordinary talent. In 2019, when Def Leppard was honored with an induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Steve Clark was recognized posthumously. Although he was not there to receive the accolade, his impact on the band's sound and legacy was unmistakable. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.